If you look at almost any coffee mug on an office desk, or scan the inspirational posters in a gym, or honestly just spend maybe 5 minutes scrolling through your social media feed, you are guaranteed to see the exact same piece of advice.
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere.
Right. It's just repeated over and over for you. Just be yourself. It sounds so incredibly simple and, I don't know, comforting.
Yeah, it's very warm and fuzzy.
Exactly. The promise is that if you just dig deep enough, find your true inner essence, let it out, and completely ignore what anyone else thinks, everything in your life will just magically fall into place.
I mean, it functions as the ultimate modern mantra, right? We
Hmm.
basically treat this idea as an unquestionable truth.
Yeah.
We elevate it to this universal law of human happiness.
Yeah.
The fundamental assumption that you and I are constantly sold is that inside every single person there is this static, perfect, unblemished, true self.
Hmm.
And it's just sitting there waiting to be uncovered and shared with the world.
Okay, well, we really need to unpack this today because this deep dive is going to completely dismantle that exact idea.
We are definitely going in a different direction today.
We really are. We are looking at a highly provocative essay from 2021 written by an author named Sui Feng. It was translated by Kinyu and edited by Peter. And let me tell you, this essay does not pull a single punch.
No, it really doesn't.
The author boldly claims that the entire concept of be yourself is just absolute nonsense. It's framed as a completely unattainable, delusional aspiration. So our mission today for this deep dive is to dig into these fascinating and honestly sometimes very intense arguments against modern individualism.
Yes, very intense.
And we want to discover why this author believes that actually abandoning yourself is the only valid path forward.
The source material here provides a really radical shift in perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, what makes this text so striking is how it attacks the very foundation of how we define our identity.
Right.
The author doesn't just suggest that being yourself is, slightly flawed advice. They argue that the yourself you are desperately trying to be doesn't even exist in the physical or spiritual reality you think it does.
Which brings us right to the author's first major hurdle, right? The whole concept of you is completely ambiguous.
Totally ambiguous.
The author points out that you cannot quantify an identity. You can't clearly define it without answering what they call the three grand questions, which are, who am I, where did I come from, and where will I go?
Right, the big ones.
Yeah. And without solving those three massive philosophical problems first, how can anyone possibly claim to find myself?
Exactly. The author is really challenging this widespread assumption that we possess some sort of predetermined core. And to illustrate the logical absurdity of trying to locate this original self,
Yeah.
the author introduces the concept of reincarnation as a thought experiment.
Oh, right.
It forces the reader to confront the timeline of their own identity.
The reincarnation analogy is definitely wild. The author literally asks, what if, from the perspective of reincarnation, someone was a pig in a past life? Does being yourself mean you should just revert back and continue to live as a pig? Or, what if someone was a rat? Does be yourself dictate that you become a rat?
That's a great point.
The argument is that if being yourself means returning to where you came from, you have to seriously ask yourself where you actually started.
And the imagery there is jarring on purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, the author is not arguing literal theology here.
Right.
Nor are they trying to convince you that past lives are a factual reality. They're pointing out a fatal logical trap in modern self-help.
Ah.
If your true self is this intrinsic original state that you have to revert back to, then you are permanently chained to your origins. So the question becomes, well, when was that definitive self actually finalized? Was it at birth, 10 years ago, in a previous existence?
It's like trying to find your true self is kind of like trying to find the original version of a Wikipedia page after it's been edited a million times by your environment.
Oh, that's a perfect way to put it.
There is no core document anymore. It's just a constant accumulation of changes. It's like trying to nail jelly to a wall. But I do have to push back a little here on the author's method.
Go get.
I mean, nobody buying a Be Yourself poster is actually trying to revert to a past life as a rodent. Are they pushing a metaphor to its breaking point just to sound edgy?
Well, I'd say pushing the metaphor to its breaking point is the entire strategy.
Okay, how so?
By taking the logic of finding your original self to its absolute most literal extreme, the author exposes the fragility of the concept. They are laying bare the absurdity of believing in a static identity that supposedly exists independently of time, experience, and, consequence.
Right.
If there is no original Wikipedia page to revert to, as you put it, then the search for a static self is just a fool's errand.
Okay, so if looking backward to our origins does not help us define the self, what actually edits our Wikipedia page? The author argues that we are entirely defined by our present environment. The core argument shifts heavily right here. They say people are products of society. When society changes, people must change. Therefore, stubbornly doing you completely ignores the reality of human evolution.
Yeah, we really have to understand adaptability here. We are not isolated units just floating in a vacuum. We are microscopic parts of a massive social organism.
Right, we're all connected.
Exactly. And the author uses the evolution of communication to prove this point, tracing a specific historical timeline to show how our daily behaviors, and consequently our identities, are dictated by societal progress, not an inner essence.
The communication timeline in the essay lays it out perfectly. The author points out that we used to send letters delivered by people or on horseback.
Yes.
Eventually, society evolved and communication was handled by the formal post office. And then came the telephone.
Yep, huge shift.
And today, communication completely depends on the internet, on WeChat, and video channels. So the author throws down this direct challenge to the reader. What kind of communication does become yourself use?
It's a brilliant question because it highlights that every single action we take is mediated by the tools, the structures, and the norms that society provides at that exact moment in history.
Yeah.
You simply cannot separate yourself from the context you live in.
Yeah.
Your identity is a negotiation with your era.
So insisting on trying to be yourself is basically like insisting on sending an urgent work document via horseback
Yes,
while your entire team is waiting for you on a video call.
exactly.
You might feel very authentic and deeply in touch with your roots riding that horse, but you are completely useless to the people around you.
Precisely.
It reminds me of that one coworker everyone has who refuses to learn the new company's software because, that's just not how my brain works.
No, we all know that person.
Right. They think they are being incredibly authentic and true to their nature, but really, they are just being a roadblock to the whole team.
And that's exactly it. Refusing to adapt under the guise of being true to yourself isn't authentic. It's merely obsolete.
Obsolete. Wow.
Yeah. If you do not change in tandem with the structural changes in society, you are completely missing the reality of what it means to be human. We are defined by our interaction with the present moment, not by an unyielding commitment to some internal unchanging standard.
Okay, so I have to adapt to use modern tools and learn the new software. Fine, but what's the actual harm in still holding on to my internal personal identity while I do it?
Well,
I mean, why does the author care so much if I secretly believe I have a true self?
the author cares because they believe resistance to social integration has catastrophic consequences.
Catastrophic.
Yes, humans are inherently malleable. No one truly knows what kind of person they will become, and nobody plans their ultimate outcome from the start. Resisting this fluidity leads to profound, sometimes dangerous delusion.
The examples the author uses to illustrate this danger are incredibly intense.
They really are.
They ask us to consider prisoners in a jail. Did they plan to become prisoners before they were locked up? Or they bring up Hitler. The author literally asks, did Hitler make the choice long ago to become the culprit of World War II? Are these people trying to be themselves, or have they not become themselves?
Yeah, we need to look at the underlying mechanism of why the author relies on such dark, provocative examples. They're demonstrating that human trajectories are shaped by a complex web of reactions, societal pressures, and unfolding events, not a pre-written internal script.
Right.
Even the most destructive figures in human history were sculpted by their environments. The self is dangerously fluid. It's not this noble, inherent truth that just needs to be unleashed.
Because if you isolate yourself just to protect this imaginary true self, the essay details some terrible psychological consequences.
Yes, it gets very dark.
The author argues that being yourself leads to living in a state of imagined beauty. You're just entertaining yourself in your own mind, completely unaware that real-world danger is approaching. You basically fall into self-intoxication.
And that psychological trap is quite insidious. The author specifically mentions that people in this highly individualized state might feel they have become a Buddha or a celestial being.
Oh, wow.
Right, they're trapped in their own minds, feeling spiritually superior, enlightened, or just profoundly unique. Meanwhile, the harsh reality is that society has simply abandoned them because they completely stopped participating in the collective reality.
So to survive, the author argues, you just have to play by the rules. You must compromise when it's time to compromise and retreat when it's time to retreat.
Exactly.
You can't just lose your temper whenever you feel like it, or, and to use the author's blunt phrasing here, kill people just because you wish to. You are forced to consider the feelings of others. Because if you stubbornly do you and the people around you end up hating you, the author says you just become a granite-headed walking dead.
I love that phrase. The granite-headed walking dead is just such a visceral image for absolute social alienation. It describes a person so hardened by their own individualism that they can no longer absorb anything from the outside world.
I am officially adding granite-headed walking dead to my vocabulary of insults.
That's a good one.
It is. But okay, I need to challenge the author again.
Sure.
Because most people just want to wear funky clothes to the office or listen to obscure music or maybe set a boundary with a toxic friend. They don't mean going on a murderous rampage or ignoring the basic laws of society. Isn't the author equating being yourself with literal sociopathy here?
Well, the author is certainly utilizing extreme, shocking boundary cases to hammer home a philosophical point. However, if we examine the underlying logic, they are arguing that any degree of hyper-individualism that ignores social operating rules and the feelings of others exists on the exact same spectrum of destruction.
So it's all on the same sliding scale?
Yes. Whether it's refusing to compromise on a team project, ignoring a friend's needs because it drains your social battery, or something far more sinister, the root error is identical. You are elevating your internal desires above the collective reality. The granite head represents the fundamental inability to let the outside world shape your internal landscape.
Man, so if this brutal logic applies to how we act at work or in society, what does it do to the stuff we actually care about, like our emotions?
It doesn't spare them.
Right, because the author doesn't stop at personal identity. They take this exact same demand for concrete, measurable integration and use it to attack our deepest, most romanticized feelings. This brings us to what I am calling the potato test.
The potato test. That's a great name for it. The craving for the tangible is the core mechanism of the author's worldview. Vague concepts are inherently deceptive precisely because they cannot be quantified. If you cannot measure it, verify it, or hold it in your hand, you cannot trust it to govern human interaction.
And the author lists these incredibly heavy concepts: conscience, mind, self-nature, and love, and they just systematically tear them apart.
Piece by piece.
Let's start with conscience. The author asks, who can quantify and define conscience? Who actually knows if someone's conscience is red or black? The text literally states it's better to not even talk about a good or bad conscience, and instead just deal with each other using formal contractual relationships.
Consider the societal implications of replacing conscience with contracts, though.
Okay, let's think about that.
The author suggests that relying on a gut feeling, like assuming someone is a good person with a strong moral compass, is a massive vulnerability.
Yeah, people can be totally fake.
Exactly. A contract is visible, measurable, and enforceable by a third party. A conscience is invisible, completely subjective, and easily faked by a charismatic person.
Which is terrifying. And then the author goes after love, and this critique is staggering.
And this part is fascinating.
The essay argues that love is originally just a state of life, but the second you open your mouth and utter the words, "I love you," you ruin it. It instantly becomes a deceptive trick.
Yep.
The author demands physical proof of love. What does "I love you" actually mean in reality? Does it mean giving me $10 million, giving me a bouquet of roses, washing my feet,
Yeah.
cooking me a potato?
They are stripping away the romanticism to expose the actual mechanics of human connection. We are all incredibly susceptible to beautiful words, right? Hearing "I love you" releases all sorts of chemicals in our brain.
Oh, absolutely.
But the words themselves cost absolutely nothing to say. They can be used to manipulate, stall, or deceive.
It's hilarious to compare handing over $10 million with boiling a rude vegetable. But think about modern dating, where people will text you poetry and say they love you, but they won't actually show up to help you move apartments.
That classic scenario.
Right. But does the author genuinely believe that a dry, legal contract or a boiled potato is a safer foundation for human connection than the feeling of love?
Emphatically, yes. Actions exist in physical reality. Whether it is wiring $10 million, signing a binding legal document, or simply standing by the stove to cook a potato, an action is undeniable.
You can't fake a cooked potato.
Exactly. You can measure it. The author is demanding that we stop navigating the world through unquantifiable emotions and start demanding verifiable output from the people around us.
So if tangible action is so obviously better than vague promises, why does society still heavily reward people who just string beautiful concepts together?
Well, that's exactly where the author goes next.
Yeah, this frustration actually leads the author to make a very sharp cultural critique. The deep dive moves into an East versus West comparison here, focusing on the idea that playing with concepts is easy, while creating tangible, rigorous results is incredibly difficult.
This represents the moment the author's philosophical stance scales up into a macro critique of societal structures. They contrast different cultural outputs to highlight the systemic danger of revering the unquantifiable over the empirical.
The essay points out that Western society doesn't have Buddhism, it doesn't have Wang Yang or Rinpoches or Karmapas.
Right.
The author even brings up self-nature, which is a big concept in Eastern philosophy, and the idea that it can produce 10,000 kinds of dharma. I mean, I need to explain like I'm five for some of this, because the author uses these terms to set up a massive contrast with the West, which they note has produced many Nobel Prize winners.
Okay, let's break down those terms briefly. Wang Yang was a highly influential Chinese idealist philosopher. Rinpoches and Karmapas are revered spiritual titles and figures in Tibetan Buddhism.
Okay, got it.
And when the author talks about self-nature, producing 10,000 kinds of dharma, they are referring to the spiritual claim that internal enlightenment can manifest profoundly into reality.
Okay.
The author is basically calling their bluff. If your internal self-nature is so powerful, prove it. Show it to everyone in a measurable way.
Because the author claims that it's incredibly easy to be a master in the East, because anyone who plays with concepts well enough can just claim that title.
Exactly.
You just weave together beautiful, poetic words about the universe or the inner self, and people elevate you. But becoming a Nobel Prize winner, the author says that requires rigorous, meticulous, exhausting hard work.
Yes.
You can't just conceptualize a scientific breakthrough. You have to literally prove it in a lab.
It's a stark division of labor. The author is framing a battle between the realm of abstract concepts and the realm of rigorous empirical proof.
I feel obligated to point out the massive generalization happening here, though. Is the author just throwing centuries of deep, complex Eastern philosophy under the bus simply because it can't be neatly organized into a spreadsheet?
Yeah.
It feels like a profoundly harsh dismissal of any internal spiritual work, just reducing it to mere wordplay.
It is undoubtedly a broad and harsh generalization. There's no getting around that. The author's primary frustration, however, is deeply and fundamentally anti-abstraction.
Okay, anti-abstraction.
It's a desperate plea for measurable effort. The author views humanity as a collective engine. Abstract thoughts, spiritual pondering, and discovering your true self burn fuel without actually moving the engine forward.
Wow.
But curing a disease, inventing new communication tools, or building a bridge literally moves the species forward. So when a culture rewards spiritual concept spinning more than empirical effort, the author interprets that as a structural failure.
So if we completely throw out our internal identity and we throw out all our unquantifiable spiritual concepts, what on earth are we actually left with?
That is the ultimate question.
We finally arrive at the author's ultimate radical conclusion. The core argument is, stop looking inward entirely and start serving outward.
This is the culmination of the author's entire logical progression. They don't just want to reform how we view ourselves. They want to eradicate the modern concept of self-discovery from our operating system completely.
The conclusion is delivered with incredible bluntness. The author writes, and I quote, "Being yourself can go to hell. Abandoning yourself is the correct path."
Abandoning yourself. I mean, it is the precise inverse of every self-care narrative, every therapy trope, and every inspirational poster produced in the last 50 years.
Since we're not supposed to be ourselves, the author lays out a highly specific vision for who we actually should be. They write that we should welcome the birth of craftsmen, scientists, and sages.
Yes.
They demand a society full of people who are entirely unselfish, selfless, and working exclusively for the happiness of the working people.
Notice the deliberate selection of the roles they praise. Craftsmen and scientists.
Yeah, the builders.
Exactly. These are individuals whose entire societal value is defined by what they physically produce for others. Their identity is not found in their thoughts, but in their tangible output.
I have incredible whiplash right now. We went from a modern culture that gently encourages us to, protect your peace, to this intense, almost militant demand for total selfless labor.
It's quite a leap.
It really is. But I have a huge question for the author's logic here. Is it actually possible for human being to be entirely selfless? Or is the idea of the completely selfless worker just another vague, unquantifiable concept, exactly like the spiritual concepts the author was just tearing apart?
That is very sharp critique.
Like, how do you measure absolute selflessness?
You have identified the ultimate paradox embedded in the essay. By demanding the destruction of all abstract concepts, the author inevitably introduces a new, highly idealized state that is incredibly difficult to quantify. However, if we synthesize the author's underlying logic, they're arguing that ultimate value is never found in self-discovery. You will never, ever find the answers to life looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
You are only what you build for others. Your identity is synonymous with your physical, measurable contribution to the social organism.
Let's recap this wild journey for everyone listening.
Okay.
We started with the realization that the you everyone tells you to be is impossible to define unless you really want to lean into being a reincarnated rat.
Which hopefully no one does.
Right. We explored the mechanism of societal evolution, realizing that refusing to adapt to modern tools just leaves you obsolete, like a coworker refusing to learn new software.
Yes.
We saw how hiding in your own imagined true self can turn you into a socially alienated, granite-headed walking dead. We learned the potato test, the idea that unquantifiable concepts like love and conscience are easily manipulated tricks compared to tangible actions.
The potato test is unforgettable.
It really is. And finally, we unpacked the controversial demand that being yourself should go to hell, and that true value only comes from abandoning the self to serve the greater collective as a craftsman or a scientist.
It is an incredibly demanding and unforgiving philosophy.
Hmm.
It strips away all the comforting illusions we cling to about our unique inner lives, and it replaces them with a stark, heavy responsibility to the collective reality.
Heavy is the right word.
It forces the reader to confront whether our modern obsession with cultivating our internal landscape is actually preventing us from making a real, measurable impact on the physical world.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today.
Yeah.
Think about that coffee mug on your desk or that poster telling you to just be yourself.
Yeah.
If you woke up tomorrow morning and completely stopped trying to discover who you are inside, if you totally abandoned that internal search and instead only allowed yourself to be defined by the tangible, measurable things you built or the specific actions you took to help people, how radically would your life change?